We can do it.
What's up, you guys? Welcome back to the WeBUS podcast. I am here with the man that makes sure you get your packages on Prime Day, the man who makes sure that every weightlifting meet is on fire, and the man, whoa, that was cool. I didn't mean to do that, Sam. That was awesome. And the man that can make balloons come up out of nowhere. He's a magician as well.
Does that happen if I do that again? That was wild.
And the man who has been through some stuff. And we're here to share that stuff. Sam Holmes, welcome to the WeBUS podcast, my friend.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Happy to be here.
You are where you should be and where every WeBUS dude usually is, in their car, recording a video. And this is where I love it. We were talking about it beforehand and saying, man, maybe I should be doing the podcast from the car because that's where we always do WeBUS videos, you know?
I mean, yeah, I was on the way to therapy this morning and I still had our times crossed a little bit. And I'm like, you know what, I'm going to figure out how to make this work. And I'd done a podcast from my podcast from the car one time with an older microphone and like the plug-in AirPods that we, all used to have, probably still have some laying around the house. So I figured, why not try it with the new setup?
Sure.
Yeah. Why not try the new setup in the car and feel like it's a real weenus conversation?
Sam, I want to let the people in on what we're going to be talking about today so they know to kind of hang out if they want to. We're going to be talking about Sam's journey through his career. We're going to be talking about the struggles he went through working night shift during that time and being able to transition to a new shift and how that's felt. We're going to talk about his son and a very traumatic event that his family, and nobody in this world should ever have to go through, that left him permanently disabled, and what Sam has done to rise up above that and become the dad and husband and kick-ass boss that he really is. Also, one of the best rappers I've ever met in my life. I got to put that out as well. This guy will hop onto WeBUS in a heartbeat and just start going, hey guys, and guys just rolls into this 2-minute long straight up freestyle that's pretty legit. How did you become such a good rapper? That's question number.
That's the first question. All right. How did Sam Holmes how did he get his bars?
Yeah, seriously. Dude, like what makes you so, because you have a way with words. Like, how did you become Sam Holmes, the man who has a way with words?
So the wordsmith part came a little bit from listening to a lot of hip hop and rap music when I was younger and deciding like, oh, I want to do this. And, I grew up and you grew up in the time of LimeWire and BearShare and being able to download instrumental versions of anything you wanted because it was all ripped anyways. And even before that, I was getting, back in the day, my first tape cassette that I ever owned as a wee child, I don't even know how young I was, but was Gangster's Paradise, the single from Coolio off the Dangerous Minds soundtrack.
Yeah, who
and
did
it had the instrumental version on it on the B side of the cassette. So that's where I was introduced to instrumental versions. I listened to a lot of different types of music growing up, from Red Hot Chili Peppers, B-50, AC/DC, Metallica, and then all of the rap, like all of it. Had Master P's first CD that was all orange and was wild. And yeah, so that's kind of how that happened. And I would just kind of sit, like a lot of people do who make music, I guess. I would sit in my emotions sometimes and then I would start rapping. And one of my favorite ones I ever did was to the Mike Shinoda from Linkin Park had another group, and I can't remember, the Executioners, I think, and it was called Remember the Name. Not the Executioners, I don't know, but it's called Remember the Name anyways. So shout out Mike Shinoda. I used that instrumental for my best ever. It's the only one I ever recorded and put like on my phone.
That's so funny. Dude, but would you call yourself more of an extrovert or an introvert?
I used to think I was really introverted. I used to think like, I can do crowds for a little while. I'm actually extroverted, but because of some of the stuff that we'll end up talking about and just some of my personality, like I've always been more inside my shell and I don't mind spending a lot of time by myself. I was an only child too, so that's part of it. So I don't like crowds for a really, really long time, but clearly like I can get in front of a lot of people and speak. And I don't think that's too like indicative of a lot of introverted people. So yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about that stuff.
All right.
Tell me a little bit, if you wouldn't mind, about Silas and what happened.
Yeah, absolutely.
Before we start, Sam, not to interrupt, but thank you for what you're about to share. I know this isn't easy. I know that this is something you don't want to talk about all the time, and I'm just so grateful for you to take the time to do this. So thank you.
Yeah, 100%. Like you said, I would never want anyone to go through this. In fact, one of the things I would say oftentimes as we were in the throes of it was I wouldn't even want the person who did this to be going through this with their own children. So if that, you'll hear what that means shortly. But Silas, we found out we were pregnant with Silas a week before I moved to Wisconsin. And then I was here for three months before Kristen and Xander moved up. And Silas came along in May of 2016. Well, in February of 2018, when he was 20 months old, he suffered a non-accidental traumatic brain injury while in the care of a babysitter. It was a very weird thing. Like you don't think that your child has been hurt by somebody until all of a sudden the police are there asking you questions. Child advocacy is there from the hospital asking you questions. And then you get pulled. Like I had to have 3 or 4 different conversations with Child Protective Services, child advocacy, the police, and then the detectives.
No worries. I think the detectives.
Yeah, the detectives. So the detectives came in and questioned us, and that was kind of the beginning of recognizing like something's not right, but we didn't know what. And then, and so essentially, probably shouldn't go into all the details around the case and all that kind of stuff, but essentially, my son was injured in such a way that it caused him to have multiple strokes. One of the strokes primarily impacting his parietal and his occipital lobes. So his parietal lobe on the right hemisphere of his brain is basically dead. He had a lot of brain atrophy. And if you think about like muscle atrophy from an injury, like you can work that and regrow that muscle. I had to do it when I had knee surgeries. It's not how the brain works all the time. So he has permanent residual and permanent disability and issues due to cognitive issues due to those injuries. One of the things that impacts him that not everybody notices, but like he doesn't have his left field of vision, not just his left eye, but like the left field of vision in both of his eyes is not there. So if you're coming from a certain direction, he can't see you. He's really good at scanning, but he doesn't have that. So that all happened when he was 20 months old. He spent 40 days, not 40 weeks. That would have been almost a year. We spent 40 days in the hospital. And of those 40 days, at least 2.5 weeks of those were in ICU. If you've ever spent any time in ICU with somebody and you hear all the beeps and all that, like we spent the night at that hospital every night with those beeps and those sounds. So he was on a respirator. He had he was on a ventilator for a long time after his brain surgery. I think it was about 2 or 3 days before he was able to come out of that. So we watched him from being essentially lifeless to regrow, like regaining his ability to say, yeah. One of the first things that he learned how to say again was, yeah. Like, you ready to go home, Silas? He'd be like, yeah. He had his bone flap put back in. I won't get too much into the details of that, but it's craniectomy is the name of the surgery. And we got to go home with him. And then he slept in our bed for probably like 30 days. I slept on the couch for like 30 days straight when we got home, just to make sure, because it was just so scary. Because he was like a fall hazard is what they would call it. Like if he fell, he was more likely to get hurt again. So we had to be very careful around that. And that's still a thing a little bit. Like anytime he takes a bump or a tumble, it's a little bit worrisome. But essentially, to give you the framework, child advocacy was like, this is the kind of injury that would be sustained by someone falling out of a 2-story window. So our worry is probably more than it needs to be, just because we don't understand the Like how
More than
bad.
it needs to be? I don't think so at all. Oh my God. I would be the way that knowing you for so long now, Sam, and the way that you and your wife have handled this and gone through the whole process, and your forgiving attitude, even towards the person that did this to your child, is just above and beyond anything that I would have ever done in that scenario, my man. So, like,
Yeah.
we are not worthy of Sam Holmes and his ability to create space and to not react and instead to respond. I can't imagine how hard and energy wasting that has been.
Every day.
You
Yeah.
know, Silas is how old is Silas now?
Silas is 8.5. So we're in
So
January of
you have been dealing
2025.
with this for 8 years.
Yeah. And here's the thing, we'll deal with this for our whole lives, for Silas's whole life. And so,
And that's what I was kind of going to get at is like,
yeah,
so you're a part of WeBUS. Obviously I want to tie this into like, how has WeBUS helped? But what I would rather ask is like, how do you use WeBUS during these times? I can't, like, you're gonna go through times of down, dude. Like, you're gonna deal with this rest of your life, and you are so strong for being able to do that. And all that we and I want is for WeBUS to be this beacon of light that's sitting in your pocket at any moment. Like,
right.
yeah, you pull me out, dude, and like talk to any dude that you need to. Like, has there
Yeah.
been any moment where you've like really leaned on it and it's helped you?
I think that this has been a tremendous community for me. I had some other trauma in my life from when I was a kid and some other things that happened when I was growing up. So I don't make friends very easily, like out in the real world. I'm not out hanging out with the
Yeah,
bros
me too.
multiple
Yeah, me
times
too.
a week. I'm pretty like, like I said, I'm not introverted, but I'm a loner for the most part as far as how I let people into my friend circle. And it's weird because about me, like I'm one of the most caring people too. So like I'll like literally be a caretaker for a lot of people and help them and be a champion of whatever they need. But it's hard for me to also like just go kick it like for whatever reason. And so
Well, I think it's because you don't like surface level conversation. You want to talk about things. You want to get deep. You want to, like go into stuff. And most people, they get
yeah,
a little uncomfortable with that.
well, and they do, and it's tough, especially like if we start broaching the subject of Silas, some people can't fathom that type of a thing, and so then they are like, "You sure it wasn't an accident?" It's like, okay, like no, we don't even use that word, like it was not an accident. So, but anyways, like this group, when Danny Lear and Donovan and Jeremy vetted me back in 2022
Yeah,
over
what a cool, great.
over the tornado room, steaks and frog legs and escargot.
Let's go.
We were all sitting together, and whenever I heard Danny talk about the group, I was like, I want to be a part of that, but I didn't know how to ask because I couldn't quite tell like how exclusive it was. Not at the time, I
Yeah,
was like, oh, this sounds like he's got a little circle, and they're
club.
like tight knit. I don't know if I can be a part of that, but I was like, dude, what's up? And so that was 2022. And then, how do I use it? I lean in as much as I can. I'm willing to be as vulnerable as I can be. I know our main group is a lot bigger now, so I'm not in there as much. But at first when it was smaller, like I would say whatever, and I would listen to
Yeah,
what the other
yeah.
guys would say, and it's like we talk about with shared experience, right? Like if I felt like I've been through something that could shed some light on what they're going through, I'm going to share it in the best way I
And
can.
how you've been through some stuff that you can share, like,
Yeah. And so it's been a great mutual experience as far as receiving wisdom. Chris came along with You Matter and talked about lifeguard groups, and I have a lifeguard group. You're in it, and having that like small group of people who I say like everything to, that's been super helpful because I don't always have an outlet. Yeah, I'm in therapy, but it helps to have people around you that know what you're going through as well, who can kind of speak to it sometimes.
good job being in therapy. Proud of you for that, my man. That's
Yeah.
something up until I started doing therapy, was always like, I don't need that. the same way a fit human would say they don't need exercise, but they're just, naturally fit. And it's like, no, everybody needs exercise.
Yeah.
Everybody needs a mental coach, especially when you've been through stuff. And the goal of WeBUS is not to be the therapist. The goal of WeBUS is just to be there to share experiences and say you're not alone. And I'm waiting for the day that we get somebody that comes into the group, my man, that goes, I had a kid that had a traumatic brain injury and now they're disabled for life. And Sam is going to be like, bat signal, and he's going to come over and share so much wisdom and knowledge and not give unwanted advice and instead just be there as this beacon of light for this human, the same way that like Tyler is such a beacon of light for anybody who has ever lost a child. Like if you've lost a child, you could go to Tyler and Tyler will be there to talk to you and to sympathize with you and to share their experience. And the lifeguard group has been something that, because the main group was getting so big, we made the regional groups, which makes it a little smaller, but that one, it could still get a little big sometimes.
Yeah.
So we made lifeguard groups. Walk me a little bit through the lifeguard group and, just for people that don't know, like maybe what is it and how do you use it?
Yeah. So without giving too long of a shameless plug to Chris Ronas and the You Matter program, that's where the concept comes from. But essentially it's a very tight-knit circle of yourself and 4 to 5 other people who have influence in your life or who are close in proximity to you. So like Alan lives here in Wisconsin. He's in the group with us, and it's a group of people who, whenever I talked to Chris about it, I thought like, who are the 4 or 5 people that I connect with most in WeBUS? Because at the time, like I still didn't have anyone outside, like in quote unquote in real life in Wisconsin that I would be bringing into this necessarily. There's some people who I could have, but at the time it was just didn't feel right. And so that kind of small group allows 4 or 5 people to listen intently to whatever you're going through and to kind of champion you through that. And where it comes from really is like when you're really down, right? And you don't know what you're going to do. Things feel hopeless. That's why they're called lifeguards. When there's times when you feel like your marriage is falling apart, or if you feel like you don't want to be alive anymore, and I know like the program started and it's for veterans a lot, but so many of us have gotten so much from it outside of so many civilians have gotten so much out of it, right?
Yeah,
so that's what it is. And to know that even if it's like been 4 weeks since I heard from anybody, like if I get on there and I need something, you guys are all there. And even if you guys don't hear from me, you guys don't mind getting in there and being like, what's up, Sam? How you doing, man? Where you at? What's up?
Where you at?
Exactly.
Yeah, man, I started my own, but I called it my soul tribe because I use it now for me to I'm trying to accomplish some goals. So I got 5 people that are holding me accountable to my goals, and we're using it in all these ways. But the bottom line is that you're just taking you got this giant group of dudes that are all around the country. And then we break it down into these more regional groups that are a little closer to you. And then if you really are struggling in some area, well, we can break it out into a lifeguard group with a really small group of people that are there, not only locally, but also through the thing that you need help with, right? Like there's people in this group that if you're struggling with finances, for example, you would want Trenton in your group, Mr. F and Nice Guy. Go check out his podcast number
100%.
1, baby. And he would be in that group to be like, hey, I'm a financial analyst. Let me help you with this.
Exactly.
And we're using it that way. So I'm just how long has that lifeguard group been going now?
I would say it's been over a year because it was before I got off nights at work. So,
and this is the stuff like when I started this group, I had no idea that we would have lifeguard groups with 5 dudes around the country talking to each other about whatever and it happening for over, and like that, I'm imagining my soul tribe is going to be a forever type of thing. It's not like I'm going to end this goal and then end this soul tribe, start a new one. It's going to be like, hey, next goal. Thanks for holding me accountable. And for you, it's going to be like, hey, I'm not struggling with this, but now I got this and I'm not this. And now it's time to go to this. And it's going to be this forever thing.
Right.
When you got somebody around you that's struggling and you know that like this could help them, like, what do you say to them? How do you get them to join WeBUS?
Yeah, that's something I've definitely thought about, because there's a few people in my life who I've thought about asking about it, or I know. I mean, here's the bottom line: any dad, anywhere, could benefit from being a part of our group. That's not like, it doesn't take a certain personality. I mean, unless you just really hate cell phones and video,
Yeah.
and then maybe not. But we all went through COVID and Zoom and all of that. So that's, most of us are somewhat acquainted with it. And a lot of the guys, even who have joined the group, who haven't been, have gotten acquainted with it. I've noticed that over time. And so there's been some dudes who came in who were like, I'm really new to this, I don't even know. Like, and then
And
now,
now they don't talk about it. They're just like, "Bah."
exactly. If I really thought, hey, this person in my life needs to be a part of this, I would not like pull any punches with telling them about it. Like, especially, I would probably bring it up in the midst of a conversation that we would be having on this app. So like, if we're having a conversation about something you're struggling with and I don't necessarily relate to it, I might say, hey man, like, I can't necessarily empathize exactly with what you're going through. Like, I haven't been through that, but I know some dudes who have. And if you're willing to be vulnerable, like, you could be a part of this group where you'll get shared experience, you'll get wisdom from multiple dudes across multiple places, various ages and stages in life. Because at first it was like, most of us were dads, but not everybody. Most of us were married, but some of us were divorced, or whatever the case. Like, it wasn't all the same. And
Yeah.
that's one of the beautiful parts of it too, is like, it's not just some dudes who are like, are your buddies from college. Like,
Yeah.
not that there's anything wrong with that, but like, some people have these like smaller fraternities of people and they just kind of let each other go. Like, hey, that dude's off on his
Well,
own
you
having
get
a
stuck in
gambling addiction,
an
but like,
echo
I'm just going to let it
chamber.
happen. What were you going to say?
Yeah. I said you get stuck in an echo chamber too. You need people to show you different ways to solve the same thing and not just hammer in that you need to try harder when it's not working, type of thing. Like,
Yeah.
with a smaller group, you have less wisdom in there. So you have less experiences. That means that people are going to give you about the same advice to do the same thing. And if it doesn't work, well, then it's your issue. There's something wrong with you. Why can't you? Because it worked for us. Versus in WeBUS, what we say is like, no, we just come and say, hey, I went through that too. And here's what happened to me. Oh, yeah, I went through that too. And here's what happened to me. And you just share your experience so that they could go, oh, okay, yeah, that might happen and that might happen. Now I can prepare myself better
Yeah.
for those things that might happen, and then you
Yep.
have the lifeguard groups where you can ask for advice in those groups, and that's where we kind of curate those with more like, subject matter experts that are in there that can actually give you good, solid educational advice on the subject you're struggling with or the goal you're trying to meet or whatever.
Yeah. 100%. And it's judgment free. There are plenty of us who have different religious backgrounds, different cultural backgrounds, different
Yeah.
political views and things like that. And we don't
Okay.
get into all of that in a direct way, but sometimes it comes out and sometimes people don't agree, but we listen to each other
That's
and
been
we
the
have
most
point of
powerful
view.
part.
That is when I talked with the ladies, when we did the interviews for Marco Polo,
Mhm.
that was the biggest thing I shared with them, is that this is a listening app. You make a video and you have a captive audience. Whoever watches your video is listening to you intently. They're not interrupting. They're not thinking about the next thing they're going to say. They might be, but they could be taking notes. And then they say what they want to say back. And it's just a back and forth. But whoever is listening to you is listening intently. And
In the whole picture.
yes, yeah,
They're not interrupting and causing it to go in a different direction. And I find most of the time, by the time the person's done with the video, they've kind of talked it out themselves anyways.
yeah. I know I've done that multiple times. I make some of the longest videos of all of us, right? So
That's the whole point. It's like you got to have a space that you could go to slow the thoughts down in your head and to get them out verbally. And a lot of times, it's all it takes is like, it's so great watching, and if you got the premium or whatever, you put on 2 times speed and you just work your way through it. But like watching you and other people like start frustrated, get upset, see the kind of way that maybe they were wrong or the other person could have done it better, and then kind of like go, oh, okay, I kind of see what I'm going to do. All right, if you got any
Yeah,
experiences, let me know. But thanks, see you later. And we're like, good job.
I process things out loud in the car with myself all the time. And so to have
Yeah,
an audience of people who then can bounce back or say like, hey, but what about this or what about that? And not even being devil's advocate necessarily, but maybe given that other perspective, it helps you process through it that much more. And I mean, I've taken it a step further. I actually have a Marco Polo group that's just me. And I can go in and make videos and I can listen to what I said later. And like, and I listened to a video from 20, 2018 or 2019, and I was talking to myself basically for like 5 years down the road, and now it's 5 years down the road. And I'll be honest, it wasn't encouraging because I'm not at the place where I was encouraging myself to be when I watched that video. I was looking at a younger, more fit, more in tune with himself individual, looking right into the camera and speaking truth to himself. And I took that and I wasn't discouraged, but I was like, I'm not there yet. And I don't need to be where he was. That Sam Holmes is not necessarily this Sam Holmes. There's a lot of me that's the same, but we evolve, we change, and we take things as they come. So all of the circumstances that I've been through since then, I don't even think I was working with Amazon when I made that video. In fact, I know I wasn't. Um,
yeah,
so, career changes, working through the middle of the night, having your hormones go all crazy while you're doing it. Like, I didn't know I was going to be going through that stuff. I didn't know I'd
man. I was
wait.
so happy for you when you found out you're getting on day shift. I think the whole WeBUS community went up and like, he's going to day shift.
The only thing that people were probably sad about is they didn't get to see my delirious 5 a.m. videos when I'd been up all night and I'm sitting here like, and all you can see is my garage door and just sitting in my car, like almost asleep, just talking about random stuff. Like,
Yeah, I do miss
sure.
those days a little bit for sure. Yeah, definitely.
But
Definitely.
yeah, like, and my life is better because I'm back on days. And I know that when I get promoted, I probably will have to go to nights at some point. But because I've already done my time on nights, so to speak, I probably won't go back anytime soon. And so, but who knows? But I'll be better prepared when I do,
Yeah, right on. One of the powerful things about WeBUS and the Marco Polo app we get to use is this face-to-face communication. And that's like something that most guys around the world don't do. They might text their friends or whatever every once in a while and send each other memes, but they don't FaceTime each other very often and communicate like this. And another powerful thing we have is WeBUS Camp, which we've done one version of, and we have version 2 coming up in July. Sam, are you coming?
Well, here's the thing. I've been so out of sync that I'm sure that was one of Alan's announcements, probably, right? Back whenever
Nobody knows you.
nobody
Nobody
knows.
knows you.
Shoot. Well, then, yes, I'm coming. Yeah.
Dude, that's one. I'm handpicking people. I need to be there, man. Like you gotta be. I know we met, in Madison, but it's time to do not only podcasts again, like together, but the WeBUS camp. It's coming up end of July. We're looking at a couple different spots like Denver, South Dakota, maybe California. We're not sure yet.
Okay.
We're talking to CrossFit gyms, all my friends to try to get free space in order to do this, that,
That's
and
awesome.
and like we're pulling strings and we're trying to do this because we're a very bare bones thing here. But number one, I'm super stoked you're coming to that. And number two, I'm really excited for other dads to come and to reap the rewards of what you have to share while being there because you're such an open, vulnerable, honest human being. And that's what we're trying to curate here. We're trying to curate a space of dads that are just doing it different than the
Yeah.
majority. And the
Yeah.
majority, when you look, are egotistical. You better shut up and get over it. You better whatever. And while we don't want to create excuses and we don't want to necessarily be like, participation trophies, we do want to curate a space in which people can be completely honest. And being vulnerable is being honest.
And I would
Can you
I would
paint for
say,
Yeah, please
yeah, go
go.
for it. What was the question? Go for it.
Can you remember a time where you or somebody else in WeBUS was just so open and vulnerable that you were like, whoa, I now want to be more vulnerable because, or wow, I didn't know being so vulnerable would make me heal so much?
For whatever reason, Kevin Rooney just came to my mind. And so, like, listening to Kevin talk about life, talk about things going on, or responding to some of the things going on. There's multiple people that come to mind, but I think really from the beginning, from the get-go, I would see and hear things from the guys. And what you said about the face-to-face, I don't want to skip past that, because the fact that we're here, we have our tones of voice, we can see each other's body language, we can see our eyes, our face, and we know what does Wes normally sound like when he's himself? What does he sound like when he's a little bit depressed or going through it? Or like, you know, all of those things. And that is a benefit of that. We reap the benefit of that when we watch the videos from the other guys, because then we also know, like, I can tell by their body language that they're being vulnerable. It would be
Yeah.
easy for me to sit here and just spout out a lot of stuff that sounds really emotional and have no emotion. And you might go, he doesn't really sound very connected to that. Well, number one, that's even more of a reason to be here, because we need to get connected to the, but second off, like, you know, like the vulnerability piece, I think, has just always been there. And you see it when a new guy comes in and he's listening for a little while, all of a sudden one day, boom, hits you with what's going on. And then all of a sudden 18 guys come back in and make a video response to that. And all of a sudden he's going even deeper and they're going even like, and it's just, it's awesome. Yeah.
That's my favorite part, is that you have people that have been through these traumatic things, and it all of a sudden they're healing by sharing that traumatic experience, which normally doesn't help you heal. Normally, you share this traumatic experience unless you're doing some sort of cognitive behavioral therapy or EMDR or whatever combined with it. It just makes you feel it all again. But in turn, you have somebody who's doing it and they get to come almost to the rescue and go, look, I've been there before too. Here's what happened to me. And they the person who had that happen to them already walks away with this feeling of like, wow, I'm getting to use this for some type of good finally. At least this isn't just garbage, the trauma that's sitting inside of me. I get to finally share this with people to make them feel better, which in turn makes me feel better about that thing I went through. It's like such a thing that when, we started this, I didn't expect to happen and is happening. And it's just like so incredible. And I have you to thank for a lot of that, because you've been here for 3+ years and you've opened up from the beginning and been so vulnerable and been willing to set the foundation for all the other guys to come in and to do the same, and you're one of our first adopters of the lifeguard group, which helps everybody else then start making their own and stuff. So just, namaste, Sam. Thank you so much, my man. You're awesome, brother.
100%. Guess what? We're at 28 minutes and my phone is going to die in like 2 minutes. So
perfect, dude. Hey, any last things that you would like to say before we go?
Man, love your neighbor. Be nice.
Seriously, I just had to replace our fence, and like, thank God I've been nice to my neighbor, because we're splitting the difference. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's good.
Yeah. Be nice
bro.
to people. That's try to make the best of whatever. And also my motto, forward is the way forward.
Sam, I'll see you in July, my friend. Thank you for taking the time. Hang out for a second.
Absolutely.
Don't hang up.
All right.